This is Dr. Qamar Cheema, and I'm thrilled to have with me Dr. Aditi Malhotra. Thank you very much, Aditi, for your time for my YouTube channel.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here always.
Thank you. Thank you. Aditi is the author, and she is also an editor of a general journal. So thank you very much for doing a lot of research for us so that we can learn from your experience. But Aditi, today's topic is very interesting, and that topic is about very provocative, what the Chinese call that this is provocative visit of um, Miss Nancy Pelosi, U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in Taiwan. So, how do you see that? Why this visit is so much important, and why it has created so much headlines globally? What is your understanding? You have written a book on this entire region as well. So, please help us to understand that why this visit as basically is so much important for the Chinese and for the Americans.
For sure. So, of course, it was not just the visit, like Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. It was a broader, part of a broader visit to the Indo Pacific region, the Southeast Asia and East Asia region in specific. Now, of course, what has grabbed the headlines has been, the speculative, which is not speculative because we have seen Speaker Pelosi kind of touchdown in Taiwan as of today. So there has been a lot of debates and discussions about the whole trip and visit to Taiwan. Also because since 1997, Speaker Pelosi would be like the highest ranking American official to actually go to Taiwan. The last that we saw was in 1997 when we had the then U.S. House of Representatives Speaker actually visit Taiwan. And even then, of course, China considered it highly provocative, and they had issues with that as well. Now, the whole problem stems from the fact that Taiwan has remained a point of attention between the U.S. and China for many years now. Now, China claims Taiwan to be its, a sovereign part and an inalienable part of, the China as we know today. However, if you look at the de facto situation, Taiwan is a self-governing island democracy, and the U.S. has kind of supported, Taiwan for many years and has continued to offer support through military aid and, arms transfers to Taiwan in case China looks to invade Taiwan. Now, it's very interesting, this whole visit comes in the backdrop of what we're seeing happening in Europe. We see, the Russian invasion of Ukraine and this whole discussion about, the international community's commitment to protect smaller states from major powers, right? So within this backdrop, there is a lot of discussion if Taiwan is the new Ukraine. However, there are a lot of there are a lot of differences between the regions, but it kind of comes under this whole backdrop of talking about protection of smaller states. Now, of course, for Speaker Pelosi, she's going there to kind of showing solidarity for Taiwan, and talking about security and the new issues, economic aspects and everything, with the president of Taiwan. And it has, of course, we are seeing how this has brought in a lot of division within the US as well, while some people support it and some people not. Of course, this whole visit to Taiwan kind of undermines China's commitment to this whole system. Let me go back and talk about the Hong Kong thing. In recent times, we have seen how China has not committed, to the idea of one nation, two systems in Hong Kong. We have seen how, through a lot of, measures, China has actually kind of undermined that. So there has been a lot of fear about, potential or possible invasion of Taiwan as well from China. So within all this backdrop, this whole visit kind of makes a very strong statement from the US side, even though very importantly, this visit is not endorsed by the US president. Even then, if you look at it, it's a very strong American statement about its commitment to the Indo-Pacific region and to Taiwan in specific.
Hmm. So this is very important that since the American president is not endorsing this visit, but how do you see that the Chinese are talking that they are going to have targeted, military operations, and they are going to have drills which are going to be around this entire island. And don't you think that these? And we have also heard that there will be live fire drills in 6 areas around Taiwan. From Thursday till Sunday. So, all these military exercises, what does this mean? What does this signify? What is the significance of all these military drills? Do you think that the Chinese have an ambition to deal militarily in case the Americans want to have a political engagement with Taiwan?
So, what's interesting is how I see it again as an analyst, right? I look at this whole flexing of, military might and the whole military posturing that we see from both sides, the Chinese and the Americans. This, I feel, is largely a part of, the whole game of chicken, as we call it, wherein both the sides are kind of showcasing and projecting their resolve and, showcasing their strengths and waiting for the other side to blink. Now, what is interesting is, this is, of course, from the Chinese point of view, this is provocative because President Xi has actually spoken about unifying Taiwan with China and has, very publicly stated as one of the primary goals during his rule. And can you see me? I think there's been. I think there
Yeah,
is.
you can continue. I'm here. You can
Oh,
continue.
I'm so sorry. I thought that the stream went off. No worries. So yeah, so I was talking about, how she has very publicly declared it to be a goal under his rule. And as a result of this, we see that, he needs to kind of project himself as a strong person, not just domestically, but also internationally. So if you actually look at this timing, it's very important because for Xi, this is very crucial domestically because 1st August of this year was actually the anniversary for the PLA. And this year in fall, we'll actually see Xi kind of, take and assume the third term, which remains unprecedented in recent times for China. So we see how this is a very important time domestically for the US, for China, and they do not want the Chinese domestic audiences and the international audiences to kind of feel that oh Xi is not as strong as he projects himself. So we've also seen Chinese incursions in airspace and waters near Taiwan in the recent years. So a lot of what we're seeing now is kind of a continuation of that, but also, like upping the ante to kind of showcase that, this specific development in the region is not really, going to scare China, and China would go ahead and do what it wants to. We've seen similar things happening even before. We've also seen the US president, very specifically state 2 to 3 times this year that in case Taiwan is invaded by China, in case there's an invasion, the US would actually deploy force to help Taiwan. And it has, increased the supplies in billions of dollars in the military aid and weapons. So from both sides, there has been escalation in that sense, not in terms of military escalation, but in terms of how they both deal with the region. And China sees this whole visit as an affront to, the Chinese sovereignty, and it also thinks that Speaker Pelosi's visit is an encouragement to the pro-independence camp, in the island. So there are a lot of these things, and of course, this remains one of the biggest flashpoints. Again, we do not know where things are going. You know as much about it as I do. However, I feel that we may not perhaps see something happening in terms of military, which is a very unthinkable. But I do feel that the Chinese would resort to persistently putting economic pressure on Taiwan, and would also take many other steps which will have a cumulative effect not just on Taiwan but also on the US. So I feel that China, we've already seen more attacks, the cyber attacks today. And so we'll see all this happening. It's not going to subside, and it will increase the tensions as we see it.
So, Aditi, how do you see that? On one hand, we have seen that the Russian aggression over Ukraine has basically affected the global supply chain, and we have seen that how the global inflation has increased. Even just today, the president of the United States had to tweet that look, the gas prices are reducing, and everyone in the world is facing that inflation. So, how do you see that if there is some sort of a military adventurism from either side? For instance, I was looking at the American military was not supporting the idea of Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. The president was not supporting, but looking at how the Chinese are coming up and they believe that this one China policy must be accepted. Do you think that if there are military drills here, for the Americans, this Strait of Hormuz and all that region, the communication lanes are very much important. So, how do you see, Aditi, that can there be any kind of, if there is any kind of a miscalculation, how it can affect the global supply chain, it can affect the inflation, and it can create further panic globally that there are two wars, one in Europe and the other in Asia. So, how do you foresee this scenario in case it is?
Okay, so before I, kind of talk about the potentials of military and adventure there, although I completely state that President Biden has not publicly endorsed Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, but it's not like that they are unaware, right? If you look at how things are internally, they may be different as opposed to how they're projected to the public. And of course, this because there are a lot of political implications of this visit as well. So we do know that the U.S. president has no authority over, where Speaker Nancy Pelosi can or cannot go, because she's a part of an equal but a distinct branch of the U.S. government. But the White House and the Defense Department and the Pentagon have actually kind of talked about how this visit will increase tensions, and they're of course expecting what we see now. Beijing actually flexing its military muscles. And we've also seen, the fact that it's a standard procedure for congressional delegates to use a military aircraft. So with the usage of U.S. military aircraft, there's another, perspective from the Chinese side, because they see this as provocative, right? But of course, within the US, there is a lot of backing from, say, the Republicans, for the speaker's visit, because again, they do not want to see the US look weak in front of China, and they consider this like as a strong statement. But of course, there is fear that China may do something, which can kind of lead to a military adventure. But having said that, we have already seen a lot of military aggression in the region before. We have seen the Chinese fighters buzzing, U.S. special ops C-130 aircraft back in June. We've also seen the Chinese ships and warplanes actually harassing Australian and Canadian surveillance planes. So it's not that we've not seen these things; they are a continued, norm by now, because we are seeing that happening. But I do not think particularly that this will lead to a war as we talk about it. But of course, we will see, talk about we will see greater tensions in the region. And it's not that, I do not expect it to kind of drastically affect like the sea lanes of communications, until and unless somebody crosses the Rubicon and there is actually a military exchange. Unless that does not happen, I do not see that happening. Having said that, of course, it's not that these tensions are they're not normal, right? The fact that this is unprecedented, the fact that Speaker Pelosi is one of the one of the highest American officials to visit in decades. So it's not that this is totally normal. But so we will see greater tensions in the region, but we are unlikely to see a war in that sense. But of course, if we look at how the Chinese are pressurizing the Taiwan, which is one of the largest, leading suppliers of semiconductors, we are already seeing so much pressure on the industry and in the supply chains. We're likely to see this, but again, this is not going to happen overnight, because a lot of measures taken by China may not, have tangible results within a day or two. This is kind of a long thing which will take weeks and months. So as we see this, of course it will affect the supply chains. We will see those economic pressures playing out, and it will not just affect the region but the whole globe. We've seen the shortage of semiconductors affecting everything from the automobile industry to the mobile industry. So this is, I think, something which is expected, and I think this is something which all the countries kind of did expect and work towards.
Hmm. So, Dr. Malhotra, I have a last question from you, and that is, how do you see the test of the Quad? So, this multilateral, quadrilateral dialogue, basically, we have not seen any kind of a statement so far. Do you think that, obviously, in the forthcoming conversations, meetings, there will be a discussion of this visit and the Chinese military adventurism in the region, or this aggressive postures which are coming from the Chinese military? How do you see the response of the Quad? Because and particularly India, which normally has a position of not annoying any actor.
So that's a very interesting question. Now, what's again, reiteration is that Speaker Pelosi's visit is not the official U.S. government or president endorsed visit. So in that sense, of course, the dynamics change when it comes to the Quad, because publicly we are seeing that the US President Biden is not technically supportive of the visit. Like, he's stated very specifically that the military did not think that this was a good idea. So of course, in cases where we do not see the US president publicly owning the visit, I do not think that there would be any expectation from the Quad partners to make a statement, and B, at the same time, for the US to have such an expectation. And also, none of the Quad partners would want to get involved in what can be seen as like a US domestic division over the visit. So having said that, it's not that the countries will not discuss these visits, right? It will be a part of, their not official agendas, but their discussions, wherever the Quad partners are meeting. And, what we will see from this visit in terms of, how the Chinese react, of course, that will affect, the region, and the Quad partners are expected to discuss that. Having said that, I do not see any official statements coming from the Quad or the Quad partners in support or against it, largely because this is not a US president visit, right? Or it's not like a US president endorsed visit. So we may not see that. But of course, the tension in the region are likely to increase, as we are already seeing it, and how it kind of, unravels. Of course, that is going to change the course or not change the course. And based on that, of course, the Quad countries will discuss. And lastly, again, in line with this, India will not make a statement unless there is a situation which arises wherein it needs to.
Hmm. Anyhow, thank you very much for giving us your expert opinion about this Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, and the Chinese military's response to this visit, where the American top congresswoman says that I'm here to promote democracy and I'm here to strengthen the relations. So thank you very much, Aditi, for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.